And Mum just called me and she was teary and she said, "Where are you? Can you get home?" And I was like, I knew in that moment with excruciating detail that Rob was dying, because I was like, there was no need to call me otherwise. I literally remember thinking, I'm in my fucking co-op. This is insane. I know my brother's dying and I'm just standing in co-op. It's so surreal. You know, the co-op I've been in 1,000 times in my life because it's 2 minutes away from my parents' house. Yeah, and I got in and I just remember my brother sitting in what I'd call my dad's chair, just staring with a very, very angry face. And as I walked in, he just went, "There's nothing more they can do. I'm dying." Hello, and welcome to the Thrive Against Cancer podcast, where we give a voice to the cancer community. My name is Toby Freeman, founder and CEO of the Robin Cancer Trust, cancer advocate, and your host. Every episode, we will be hosting open and honest conversations with people affected by cancer, whether personally, as a family member, clinician, or charities and organisations. We will be talking to the cancer community about the cancer community and all the things that are important to you.
Today's episode is a little bit different. We are turning the table and interviewing Toby himself, as we felt his story needed sharing. Today's guest is Toby Freeman. Thank you so much for joining us today on the other side of the table. Welcome.
This feels very strange over this side, but I shall do my best.
So you have been hosting these podcasts, and today we are interviewing you about your experience with cancer, because you haven't had cancer yourself. It was your brother. So can we delve into a little about your sort of growing up with your brother, about your relationship and what happened?
Yeah, of course. So I am the youngest of three brothers. So I've got an elder brother. Rob was in the middle, and then I'm 2 years below Rob. So growing up, Rob was sort of just like my idol. I was just like pottering around, following him. Whatever he liked, I liked. Always being much worse than him at every sport. He was annoyingly good at every sport.
That's very frustrating.
It is, isn't it? I could never beat him at anything. He was a lefty as well, which makes everything incredibly difficult. But yeah, so basically I just remember following around, idolising him, and him just being the funny guy, great sports. And yeah, we grew up. Rob was ill young. He actually had ME. So about early couple of years of secondary school, he was diagnosed with ME, so chronic fatigue. So he wasn't in school for quite a lot of when I was navigating that part of my life. But as we grew older, as Rob sort of came out of that, about 17, 18, we started playing football together. So every weekend, all week was just about football, talking about football, playing football. I would say I was the more wild and reckless one, and Rob was definitely the old head. There was sort of the running joke that if we had a match on a Sunday, Rob would pay my subs, get me there, make sure I had my stuff and my boots, and sometimes drag me out of bed, usually quite hungover, possibly still drunk, have cleaned my boots for me. So yeah, he was just that guy. He was the sensible one, and we just bounced off each other really well. But it was a very close relationship. It was, constant texting, constant talking, and going to each other for advice, probably wildly differing. And when he was, 20, 22, 23, he just was getting into his career. He was working for my dad. He was doing university. He'd moved out of the house. And I was, shall we say, living a young lifestyle, partying quite a lot. I had a job, but I also worked in bars. So let's say alcohol was probably quite a large part of my life. And then Rob, I remember it was Christmas time 2010, getting my years right, they're so long ago now. 2010, Rob had this persistent cough that just wouldn't go away. And I remember him moaning. He'd had a few months of like bowel habit changes, but we have IBS in the family. Everyone's got a dicky belly, so that wasn't uncommon. I remember his being quite crippling, like not wanting to travel, being really conscious of where toilets were at all times. I remember him moaning about being really tired all the time and having to have naps, but he was doing all these things. He was doing uni, when he hadn't done schooling, so, quite taxing, doing uni, doing his full-time job, doing
having a diagnosis of ME in the past, that's also fatigue is a massive thing of ME, isn't it?
And he'd worked really hard to get himself in peak form. So I remember he was working towards having a six-pack. He never drunk or barely drunk. He always said he was fun enough without it, which he was. He ate clean. He used to have a chicken and salad sandwich every day with nothing else in it, like bland as you like. And he used to run every morning. And I remember him complaining. You look back now and you start seeing the signs. And he was like, I could only run 2 miles this morning. Back then I was like, 2 miles?
That's better than I did, yeah.
He's like, I didn't do my 5. I'm like, he does 5 miles every morning. But obviously these are signs that we didn't pick up on. And I can't speak for him, but either didn't want to pick up on them or just thought they were part of life. I remember him thinking he just had a virus, as this cough just wouldn't go away. It was the time Be Clear on Cancer had this, if you had a cough for more than 3 weeks, go to the doctors. Obviously, young lad, Christmas time, fit and healthy, cough. It is what it is. Christmas happened, and I remember mum and my auntie nagging him a lot. And he went to the doctors and they just sort of brushed off, like, it is what it is, probably a virus thing, come back.
And how old was he at this point?
23. So I remember I used to work in the bars and I'd come home to watch House MD. Love it. Hugh Laurie, terrible accent, really good. That was my little decompress. And I'd watched an episode where someone had a blood clot the night before, went to bed, woke up in the morning, and Rob had a swollen left arm and completely red. I'm like, I definitely think you need to go to the doctors. Mum, obviously, like, get up to the doctors.
Not normal, yeah.
And I was like, Rob, I think you might have a blood clot. That's really weird. I've just been watching this program. He went up to the doctors, turned away again, and the next day, Mum just took him up to the walk-in and was like...
Oh, so he went but didn't go in?
No, they turned him away.
So
just like, away. If it gets worse, come back, the classic. Next day, Mum was like, no, up to the walk-in. And he was admitted. And then within like an hour, they'd done a blood test and then he was taken in. And it was like, what's going on? They're like, oh, well, he's got a blood clot.
Wow.
Okay, well, he's had some knee surgery. Could it be this? Could it be that? He's obviously still got this cough. I'm not great with the particulars, but there's this week period in hospital where your mind's racing. I remember we're thinking, is it pneumonia? Has he got this blood clot from having these surgeries? Has he not worn those lovely socks you get to prevent blood clots and whatnot?
Everything goes through your head, doesn't it? Every little.
But cancer didn't. That wasn't anything that, because we didn't have cancer. We were the heart disease and diabetes family. That's our jam. But never had cancer. Don't know of any relatives or anyone that's ever had it. So. Wasn't really at the forefront of the mind. And then we were there however many days later and we got pulled into a little side room. Now, I didn't know what cancer was, but I knew what the little side room was. You've seen enough popular culture to know the little side room's never a good thing. And there was my brother, my brother, my mum, and then me. My dad wasn't up there. I think he was working. He hadn't made his way back yet. And Rob got told you've got a mediastinal germ cell tumour. And obviously, I could see he just went. Yeah. My mum, I remember, was shaking and crying uncontrollably. And I had to ask, I was like, is that cancer? You haven't said the word.
And the language they use isn't things you've necessarily heard before.
Don't know what a mediastinal is. I don't know what a germ cell is. And I think a tumour's a cancer. So, the next words out of my mouth were, is that cancer? And he said, yes. Okay. And then I cannot remember. I hear a lot of stories of the world closing in and that just hyper focus, everything blacking out. And that's all I can remember. I just remember sitting there thinking, good Lord, Rob has cancer. The fittest, healthiest guy I know has cancer. And from then it was, go home, you've got a couple of days, you're going up to the specialist. You're like, okay, specialist never good because that means something's really wrong. And he had this stage 4. So they described it that this tumour, this cell that had never made its way down to his testicles, because the germ cells are the reproductive cells, so make up the cells of the ovaries and the testicles. One of his cells never made its way to where it should have been, sat rogue, and then for whatever reason, 23 years later, just started replicating. which created the tumour that then wrapped around his heart and his chest.
So it didn't actually go into the testicle?
No, he never had a primary. He was the only guy I knew that checked his testicles.
But it wasn't that.
And it wasn't that. He'd gone and had ultrasounds and found cysts. So he was that health conscious.
Primary cancer for it was that type.
It was that type. Yes, absolutely.
So, but it just didn't.
But just this cell just
the same way
floated around and then became just replicated. So it was treated as a testicular cancer would be, but the cough came from his lung basically being pushed from the tumour. That's what it was, and the blood clot was a part of the tumour that had broken off. Yeah. So the tumour got so large that part of it had chunked off, created the blood clot, which is how they found it. Obviously, very late stage.
And quite a few places it had already spread to the body as well.
Yes. I don't have a great grasp of where it had spread. And as the months progressed, we have talked about it since. And clearly it had. They did certain scans at certain points. And, it clearly had spread quite far. So, yeah, that was just the beginning of this year. And Rob's 24, the guy I look up to, and I'm sort of 22 and a bit untethered in the world. And I'd just become a bar manager at that point. So again, not probably the healthiest of lifestyles ahead of me. But Rob was whisked up to Bart's, who did amazing. And they treated him as absolutely best they could. He was put on clinical trials. They gave him, I think, 7 rounds of chemotherapy. He then had secondary leukemia, which was a risk from his clinical trial just because it was so aggressive. And all this while, he's up in London. We're back at home, and Mum and Dad are up in London, and Bart's in the London charity did incredible putting my parents up. They allowed them to stay in the hotel adjacent.
Did he have to have treatment that meant he was in hospital for a few days at a time? And
he was up there for huge periods of time, yeah. And then he would come back, and then he'd go up. And then when he was treated for his leukemia, obviously he was on the ward, complete isolation.
Can't see him.
Couldn't see him. I was working all hours under the sun. I think I was working like 90-hour weeks.
Wow.
In an environment where, there's quite a lot of people. I was picking up things all the time. So there was weeks and weeks that go by because I couldn't see him just because he was neutropenic and I had a cold, or, Mum's like, how are you feeling? You're like, I'm feeling a bit under the weather, but I could just be stressing. Like, you can't risk it.
Can't risk seeing him, yeah.
And we're sort of pre-smartphones, just before we talk about this all the time. Like, we just missed the really connected part. So you're just completely isolated. Rob in his world, going through everything he's going, but as family members, we were in our world.
I guess when you saw him as well, he was weak, looked different, like a very it's very hard then seeing the person that you love and look up to and respect a fraction of them, their normal self.
So Rob really withdrew within himself. So I felt from 18 onwards, he was finding his confidence. Okay. It had that period of his life was really difficult where, there's formative years where he'd been ill and he was coming out and he was defining who he wanted to be. He wanted to be my dad. He wanted to be a mini version of my dad. He worked for my dad. He always said, I just want what Dad had. He wanted family. He wanted stability. I was I'm going to travel the world and do all these crazy things guy. And he was just like, calm down.
Yeah.
He's seeing him go from that and finding his confidence, and he was a brilliant footballer. Like I said, he was getting really comfortable with his his body and whatnot, to go just see him withdraw within himself. And Mum was amazing. She was his guardian angel, he said, but he just sort of withered away, really. And you could see that it was quite visceral when you'd go with periods of time in between, hair loss.
Did he talk to you though? Did he open up about how he was feeling at the time, or was he, did he try to protect you in a way?
Did we talk? Oh God, I don't think I was well placed to be dealing with supporting him. It was very much a mum and dad supporting him, even though he was a young man. He was 23 going into 24. He wasn't young, but I just think he needed that support. I just felt completely isolated away from them. I had what I had going on, and I was trying to navigate that as best as I could, looking back in some quite unhealthy ways. And I think we talked when he was back, and we'd have very honest and open conversations. But yeah, I think him at those points would try and just find some normality in it. You know, we'd watch Family Guy, we'd watch American Dad, you play board games, you do all the things to try and make it, eat dominoes, all that sort of sliver of normality. But yeah, I guess he didn't want to burden all of us with that all the time, because maybe he didn't want to think about any of that as well. So that's a huge thing to take on, all of those thoughts. If you're unburdening them, you have to have them first, right? And actually, I think he was just like, I'm going to shut down until this is over. But obviously, we just never really got to that point.
And treatment continued for a period of time, but then it wasn't working, or?
Yeah, so he needed a stem cell transplant, and my elder brother was a 100% match, which was obviously great news. Went through that, bone marrow biopsies, and
that's a lot on him as well. You know, as a family, you're going through both being, you know, in hospital and to deal with that.
You know, that's a whole process, and it's, you know, it's an amazing process. And watching my brother go through that, he obviously, my eldest brother, felt like, amazing, I can do this. I am, you know, I can literally save my younger brother. But that didn't take, and obviously, you know, it's a roller coaster. You know, the chemo's going well. Oh no, it's secondary leukemia. The stem cell. Oh no, it didn't take. And obviously, as you do with these things, I'm chunking a stupendous amount of time into not much. This is an 11-month period from Rob getting diagnosed. And then, yeah, the stem cell transplant didn't take. And then you just, you know, options start becoming less and less available. And it was the October of that year, nearing Halloween, because I remember we were setting the bars up for Halloween. And I got a call from Mum. They'd had a consultation, and I was in the local juice aisle of my car, so I was staring at orange juice.
You remember these details so well, don't you?
And Mum just called me, and she was teary, and she said, "Where are you? Can you get home?" And I was like, I knew in that moment with excruciating detail that Rob was dying, because I was like, there was no need to call me otherwise. And if it's good news, you're telling me the good news. And I just remember standing there like, I literally remember thinking, I'm in my fucking co-op. This is insane. I know my brother's dying, and I'm just standing in co-op. It's so surreal. You know, the co-op I've been in 1,000 times in my life, because it's 2 minutes away from my parents' house. And I got in, and I just remember, clear as day, opened the front door, opened the second door, opened the third door. Weird amount of doors.
How many doors have you got in your house?
So many doors. And I just remember my brother sitting in what I'd call my dad's chair, just staring with a very, very angry face. And as I walked in, he just went, "There's nothing more they can do. I'm dying." And you just think how you've been there the whole year, you know all the information, but you just never think that is going to be the outcome. Even as things are, you know, options are getting lesser and lesser and lesser, I think there's just some self-preservation in never wanting to accept that as an outcome.
And it's almost impossible to believe there's nothing someone can do. There's nothing, no drug that can help. There's nothing that can kind of keep him here that little bit longer.
It's so final.
Yeah.
You know, there is nothing. My medical team have done everything they can, and they were, like I say, absolutely amazing. Now we are just at...
Had they given him time frames at this point?
Well, what is a time frame? It was months, and those months turned into, you know, this is late October. We lost Rob on December the 10th. So they swiftly got less and less. And this is where I say we know it had metastasized and spread.
Yeah.
And they did some scans, and we figured it spread to his brain. They did a scan. They never really told us, because what's the point of that?
You know, it's not going to be a pretty end, and what's the point? It's not going to help knowing exactly the places that the cancer has gone to.
And I remember incidents afterwards where Rob had issues with his spleen, and we had to go up to the hospital, and he was just like so fucked off, because he's like, I don't want to be in hospital. You've already told me I'm dying. I don't want to be here.
Was he, because you're saying he's angry, was he scared, or did you feel that actually he was just more angry about the whole thing?
Definitely initially angry. Really, like a whole year of pent up anger and frustration. And, you know, what is fear? Fear is being scared, I suppose, isn't it? So that ebbed and flowed. And I think, you know, I'm not a great massive believer in the stages of grief, but they're just emotions, aren't they? They come up in all different times, but there was definite anger, there was definite sorrow, but we did get to an acceptance towards the end, because weirdly, even though there was nothing more anyone could do, Rob had gained some control back. The whole year, so out of his control, poked, prodded, cut, treatment, injected, told what to do, told what to do. And
he's got his days to himself. He's not having all those appointments and everything.
And he can plan. Yeah. The bit you can control, or the bit he chose to control, was the funeral, was having those conversations with his friends, was...
Be able to say goodbye to loved ones, I suppose, yeah.
What's the bucket list items he wanted to do? Yeah. He went to see... we went to the zoo. That was lovely. Colchester Zoo. Amazing zookeeper experience. We've got some lovely photos of Rob with lemurs on him and stuff. Feeding orangutans and things. That was really cool. He went to a concert with my oldest brother. He was clearly on some good drugs, because he kept talking about the light show. Oh. And my brother came...
There was no light show.
Lasers. Okay. There was no lasers, but Rob thought there were lasers. So
perfect. He was happy with his lasers.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how did you navigate that part of it? Because obviously you've been told your brother is dying. You are a young adult. You are living your life. You are working. You are going about your daily activities. You can't be at his side 24/7. You have to sleep. You have to eat. But life, is going to be very unnormal for quite a long period of time. I
think a lot of you just going, I don't know what to call it, but survival mode, isn't it? When things this big, of this magnitude happen, you just go into this survival mode where it is just the hyper focus. So I was very lucky. I quit the day, or left my job the day Rob was told he was terminal. I just said to my boss, haven't been around, need to be around. And he just went, sure, we'll be here when you need to come back, which was amazing. My dad, I think, stopped work, or definitely took a massive, massive step back during that period. My mum was by Rob's side the whole time. So we were around for that bit, which felt like this is our time to do whatever we need to do to be together. And everyone was back in the house. So we were a proper family unit at that point. So I feel very privileged that I didn't have these other things I needed to focus on. Like, I don't know how I would have gone to work. I don't know how I would have dealt with someone being a drunken idiot and me having to, because you've got all the anger, you've got all of that emotion that you have to deal with. Yeah. So we had this time that was sort of ever dwindling. You never know it's happening, but, you could see the progression of how Rob was getting worse. I remember my mum being by his side. He didn't want to sleep on his own.
It's that worry, I suppose, that you need someone there in case something happens.
You literally know you might die in your sleep and you don't want to fall asleep. How do you fall asleep knowing that it could be the last? That's
it's probably the best way to go, because you're not going to it's less, that people don't see it necessarily, but equally it's that, we only ever sleep knowing we're going to be opening our eyes in the morning. And that's just horrible.
So, and we were lucky. Rob wanted to be at home initially for the whole part, which is a really odd dynamic for people caring for him. Now, very tertiary me. I'm talking about my mum specifically. You're in carer mode the whole time. Mm-hmm. Rob had an incident, and then after that incident, where he needed to go into hospital, he decided that was really scary, and I want to be in a hospice. So that move to being in the hospice allowed us to really be a family again, because mum could be mum. She wasn't having to deal with injections or tablets and, caring for his every need and freaking out about, oh my God, what happens if his temperature spikes or any of this.
And she can rest knowing that there's those nurses and carers that actually are there that will do everything.
Yeah, just amazing. If you said hospice to me, I would have thought, old place where people go to die and it's scary and there's ghosts or something. And you're like, it's not. It's just like... It's like a hug. They're amazing. They're the most incredible people, from the catering staff to the cleaners to the reception people to the nurses, all of them. It's just like getting a hug. They'll cook you your favourite breakfast. They'll give you a board game. They'll have a little chin wag with you and distract you. And your person is getting the best care. So it was Christmas time and it was quite quiet. So I don't know if it was quite in the hospice. It was probably very busy. It's always busy, but it was quite in like the communal areas. So we had Christmas time, we had a photo shoot. Again, we'd just do the normal stuff. We'd watch TV, we'd chat. We almost felt like just this safe space where we could be a family again. And we had all these nice outings as much as we could. And Rob got 9 days in the hospice. And then there was one morning where we were going to meet all of our friends up at our local football club, Cole U, for a box. They'd given us a box. So we'd invited like 30 odd people, like all of Rob's mates. But at this point, he'd had his conversations. He'd had a dinner with his mates 2 nights before and been like, I need you to do this and this and this for me, like coffin bearing and all this. And I'd help him when he was at home. I'd helped him write his funeral plan and everything. We'd done that. He had a coffin which had like all of his favourite bands on it. We loved Scrubs. So like at the end of the coffin, as it was walking down, was a picture of JD and Turk dressed as pimps, just because we were like, that will make everyone laugh. That was sort of Rob's humour, Rob's choice, and it had all his favourite bands on it. He chose the music. He liked death metal and heavy metal. So he decided he wanted specifically this incredibly heavy song by a band called Lamb of God, just so we could all look at our nan and laugh, because she would not know what the hell was going on, because she was like
what's he doing at the funeral playing this? It's not really
you're like so used to hymns and stuff, and then there's just this death metal playing. Wow. So it was really, and I got to write my eulogy and say that to him and let him read that, and that was really nice. And we had all those conversations. He wrote a family letter which was really cool. So we've got that. And then in the hospice we were supposed to be having this day out, and then in the morning Rob just took a turn. He basically had a shower, and as he came out the shower he was in excruciating pain, and they said from there basically he said, what the fuck's going on? I think that was the last thing he said to Mum, and then the hospice helped us through that, and he passed away at half time.
Wow. So it was so cool. On that last day it was really quick,
but they're amazing. Like, it's happening, and the doctor pulled me and my brother out and said, your brother's had what we'd call an incident, and we're at end of life and we're going to help you through that. So like my parents were just dealing for a couple of hours with Rob, and they didn't know he was dying, actively dying. But the doctor came in and we told, helped us and was like, look at his feet. We do this. We give him these medications. You can tell he's not in pain. And they talked us through that process, so your loved one's okay. And there came a time where we were all around him, and my brother said what he needed to say. I won't go into it because I'll start crying. But being there in that moment is a real privilege. And
it's hard, isn't it? Thinking you're going to be. The idea of being there when a loved one passes is so difficult. I mean, I did it with my mum, but actually being that one to hold their hand at those final breaths, seeing it happen and knowing that they're out of pain, out of, in this now peaceful state, not having to go through, because treatment is tough.
Yeah.
And watching your loved one go through treatment is difficult. And I know the feeling of that grief. I'm sure, without putting words in your mouth, it's a massive. You get this like relief because you know that they're okay, but also you have this just overwhelming sadness of, I can't have that conversation again. I can't give them that hug again. And knowing that it's final, and it's a really, really tough place to be. How did you navigate all of that?
How do you navigate all of that? I guess blindly fumbling in the dark, really. I don't know. I've gained so many coping mechanisms. I know how I would deal with it now. But looking back, it's just, you're in this survival mode. You're reacting to what's happening around you. I guess you call on your best friends, you call on the family unit, you try and step up as best as you can. I remember driving Mum's car home afterwards because my dad was like, Mum can't drive, can you drive it? And for me that was like yes, I fucking can drive this car, because then I've done something good for the family today. And we were quite lucky. We had, not everyone gets this, but we obviously had time to plan with Rob. So you knew the wish, that bit alleviates a lot of stresses. We knew the wishes, we knew what we were going to do, we knew who we needed to tell, we knew who was going to do what on certain days. You know, being a young man, he didn't have any assets or the complicated paperwork and things. I don't know. I think you just one foot in front of the other. That's sort of been our family motto over the last year with mum getting cancer and stuff. It's a one foot in front of the other. And I think it is. You just navigating blindly in the dark until you find something that works. And I think I just feel very grateful that I had an amazing support network around me. You know, I have a very solid and stable family unit. My parents just, Christ, you know, don't want to do that thing where I belittle my own grief by saying, but they're parents. I'm a parent now. I can imagine what they were going through, and they still drew me and my brother out of it. And then I've got my friends, you know, helping me navigate as best they could, being young people as well, you know, just showing up. And I think you just lean on everyone at every time.
But, were you open about how you felt?
Oh, yeah, I would. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've got a set of, God, I get really emotional talking about them. I've got an amazing set of friends, you know, a series of set of friends. I'm quite lucky. People I worked with, people that saw me through that year, we were very close with, and they helped me navigate that. My oldest set of friends, bunch of guys, we're very open about our emotions, which I feel very, again, being in a set of guys, I feel very lucky. You know, and another one of my best friends, Charlie, is a girl, and that really helped me. And I think just having all these people to lean on at different points when I needed them, they just sort of saw me through that. So
they pull you up on things.
Absolutely. Allowed to talk to you, allowed to talk about emotions, but also hold you accountable. And you know, I met my now wife during this period as well. And
you did say as well, you did drink quite a lot around the time of his death, and obviously alcohol is a coping mechanism a lot of people do use, and often we don't realise we're using it as a crutch, and it gets a bit more out of hand the more it happens, because you sort of think, oh, I need that drink because I'm upset, or I need that thing. What was the sort of turning point of that? Because I know you were saying that you did it a lot while he was ill. Did you sort of realise once it passed that actually that was too much, or did it take a while to realise?
I would say, no, it definitely took a while to realise. I think it really peaked during that year. It was my coping mechanism. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. Incredibly destructive and unhealthy. I think the turning point was meeting my now wife. And she held me truly accountable to what I was doing, and wanting to change for her. I remember at one point, a few months later, her saying, like, after another drunken, stupid night, her being like, get help or I'm leaving you. And I was like, okay.
So wake up call you needed.
That forced me into grief counselling that helped me manage some of those expectations, manage my emotions and expectations of myself. And that was transformative. Once I'd done that, I wouldn't say I dropped alcohol. I mean, the real point of dropping alcohol was when my daughter was born. My wife was pregnant, couldn't drink, and I was like, I'm not drinking.
Yeah.
But I think I definitely had what I would consider a drinking, not problem, but, you know, an unhealthy relationship with alcohol.
But at this point, you were seeking help in other ways.
Yes.
And understanding your grief a bit better, because I think that's it. If you don't, you know, we all talk about how amazing counselling is, but actually it's so hard to kind of put your foot there and go in, admit you need the help.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
It's that admission. And you'll think, oh, well, I'm coping all right. I'm still able to work or do life. Yeah. But actually, and I think, I mean, I don't know about you, but was it kind of the firsts of everything, the first birthday, the first Christmas, the first, you know, all of those firsts that you're not with him for. And especially if he was your idol, you know, you looked up to him, you were really close. They're the difficult things, I'd say, is getting over that first year of everything before you can kind of even start to undo any sort of work in that grief sector.
I would say that first year is just all consuming. All, like, it was just, it really hadn't stopped. You know, the grief just carried on, and then you hit this first milestone, and that's like, just the peak of it. And those death anniversaries just roll over. His birthday, anniversary, his death, sort of May and December, sort of top and tailing a year, that they're really difficult because they're just constant reminders. You know, I was very lucky. I had a great support network, and then I had the charity to focus on.
Yeah,
that was a massive outlet for me.
So let's talk about that. What brought you into, because again, we're very used to people maybe losing a loved one and almost completely going the other direction. They don't want to know, they don't want to talk about it. You have thrown yourself literally headfirst into working in the cancer sector.
Yeah.
What was that decision of actually starting a charity and putting yourself in a position where you're going to meet so many people with the same disease that you lost your brother to?
Yeah, and that's not something I really ever, sounds so weird, but I never really contemplated that part of it when we started the charity. The need was something bad has really happened. I think there's a natural, something good has to come of this, right? But ours was that sort of conversation, but then hang on, if Rob can get this, the fittest, healthiest, most health conscious guy we know, anyone can get this. Yeah. Well, who's doing stuff out there? Okay, Macmillan at the time, and still, obviously, amazing support. We had, amazing support from the CNSs from Macmillan. Cancer research, amazing research, but we couldn't see anyone talking about this type of cancer. This germ cell cancer, we knew Rob's was rare. We knew it also touched upon the testicular and the ovarian. And we were just like, well, surely people need to be talking to young kids about this because these are life lessons. So there was a need and there was a want to do something good just because you feel terrible and you want to put something good out into the world to make you and other people feel better. And then there was just a family conversation. I remember vividly, apparently I led that conversation. I don't really remember that. I remember vividly my dad saying, if we're going to do this, we're going to create something that outlasts us because there is a need. Yeah. We're not going to do, and there's nothing wrong with this, but do something that is a memorial to Rob, set it up, and then it'll fizzle out when our grief not dissipates, but as life grows around us. And that's been the real driving ethos of it.
So Rob's your kind of, he's what made you start it, but he's not the front and center of the charity, is he? It's all about everybody else and actually the awareness side of it, rather than actually about his story as such.
And that's been a beautiful journey to witness, because there's just key points in the years since where you go, okay, obviously it starts about Rob, and it's everyone's helping you out because they love you and they want to support, and they knew Rob. And that is so amazing. It's so vital in starting.
It keeps his legacy kind of alive.
Yeah, and you're talking about it, and it's all raw, and you're having these charity nights. You're crying at the end because you're thinking about Rob, and gosh, the amount of we used to do music events in the bars. So you'd do that, and then the last song would always be a memorial to Rob, and you'd be like, oh, I'm crying, and everyone's standing there, and it's lovely, amazing memories that I will cherish forever. And then you see this thing grow, and you're like, then volunteers start coming in because they like it. And you're like, oh, wow, okay, now the cause resonates with you. And then a few years later, you can see that actually we're helping so many people. We're telling their stories, not constantly telling Rob's.
Yeah.
And we're now, 12, 13 years later, and it's about the community with Rob as our just inspiration, which is lovely because I could step away from this. My dad, who's on the board, could step away from this. And this whole thing would run because there is a need
without you.
And there's a community, and we serve that, and we've worked really hard with that. And I that's for me is the greatest legacy. I've got young children, and we talk about Uncle Robin a lot, but I also talk about my work, and I'm like, that's because Uncle Robin, look at all this.
If he hadn't passed away, you wouldn't have been doing this.
Yeah.
Do you find it's a way of coping with it?
I definitely think it has been, certainly. So I'm a big believer in grief doesn't dissipate, right? So
No.
When you're in that first year, your grief is all of this, and it stays that, but just life grows around it. Like I said, I've got a young family. I'm very lucky in that. I've had the charity. That's a big part of my life. The grief is still there and can be accessed at any point, and I can still on December the 10th, or leading up to December 10th, as my wife likes to remind me, be a complete arsehole because I don't realise that this thing is happening. And if I think about it too hard, my heart still wants to split in two, and I could sit here and talk to you and I could be crying because I think how grateful I am because my friends supported me through that. That's never going to go away. But, you just can't, I can't be in that the whole time because I've got to get up. I've got a dad. I've got a job. I've got a husband. I like going running. It's all these other things.
And he would want you to do that. His legacy would have wanted to be carried on through you living, not living in grief. And grief is definitely... We don't speak about it enough. We don't speak about our feelings enough. But, it only takes that one song, that one date, that one reminder, that place, that smell. And it takes you right back to that moment that either you were with them prior to them being ill or actually to their death.
Yeah.
And it can hit you like an absolute train, can't it? You could be absolutely fine. And then all of a sudden you're sitting there sobbing because you haven't heard a song. And it's an amazing, God, emotion is just so hard to navigate. But equally, there's that saying, isn't it, that grief is love. And we only grieve because we love.
Yeah.
And so it shows the power of love and how much that has really, that impacts your life. And he will always be there. He'll always be part of you and your mom and your dad and everything. But navigating your life after him, he would not want you to sit in sorrow. I'm sure he'd be looking down on you, being so proud of what you've achieved and actually the way that life has gone, because it could have gone so differently. Had you kept on with alcohol, maybe dabbled in other things, maybe just sat in just life was ending for you because you didn't want to live because you've lost him. So it's really inspiring to see how much you've created. But equally, like now, as you say, you're now working alongside people.
Yeah.
And people are now sharing their experiences with you. This is all done. And these lives you would have saved from what you have achieved. And that will live on. And that's just incredible. And it's putting your heart on the line for somebody else's good. Yeah. So yeah, it's really amazing. And, what you do within the charity, especially being, with your mum and everything else, because you've also recently had another diagnosis within the family. Your mum has recently had that. So does that take you right back as well to what you've gone through, or have you navigated it very differently this time around?
So, so earlier this year, or 2024, don't know when this is going to go out.
Sometime in the year.
Mum was diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer, which, we run an ovarian cancer awareness charity.
Yeah.
And listen to episode 1 to hear her story. But it's, the irony is not lost on the family. And she just had no symptoms. And you get told there, you've got ovarian cancer. And it's impossible not to be, you talk about doom scrolling on Google. You're doom scrolling in mind because you go, been here, done that, all of these memories. We know where this could go. We know all about it, and we're good placed, and we're well connected with other charities and orgs that can support her. And so, it's hard not to. But the privilege I have is having spoken to so many people and understanding the community. I know that that's a rational response.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to start doom scrolling, and I know I'm going to share that with my wife, but I'm not going to go share that with my mum. And I know that I can't stop people Googling, and I know I did it. But you go, okay, pinch your salt. I have to, because this is not the be all and end all.
The stats aren't everything,
Absolutely. Whatever percentage you've got, there's a percentage in that category and there's a percentage in that category. So sometimes knowledge makes absolutely no difference. It's individualized care within, obviously, parameters of medical professional for individualized people. So let's focus on that. And it's been, what I took out of the 2 experiences was, I know what I mucked up during that year with Rob. And I'm very kind to myself. I was 22 and I was a young 22.
And you've never dealt with grief before. You've never dealt with your brother dying. Like, this is...
I'm the baby, right? I'm the sheltered little baby of my family. I'm a mummy's boy.
And you can't regret anything. That's why I always see it. You can't regret how you behaved because that was right at the time. And you learn, don't you? You learn as you go on.
Yes. What is life? It is making a series of mistakes. And when you make a mistake, all you can do is learn from it, apologize sincerely if you need to, and then do better next time, right?
Yeah.
So when Mum was diagnosed, I was just like, what would I do? Knowing all that I know, and I'm very lucky to know all that I know, how would I do this? And it was just like, right, practical emotional support. So all of the things, all of the questions, being there with Mum and Dad at the consultants, talking them through that, looking up. They were lucky they had private medical healthcare, so helping them get that, which, has been transformative for my mum in the fact that she was allergic to a chemo that she wouldn't have then had access to if she wasn't. So we went down that route and just helping her. And then, hopefully, and moving forwards after she's okay now, she's in remission and she's on 2 years chemo tablets. Now it's, constantly checking in with her and being like, because I know it's not over, because it is easy to go, oh, you've done that. Should be fine now. I know that's not the case. I'm lucky that I have this perspective and I've talked to so many people that I can draw on and go, what is the best version of support that I can be? So I feel very, very lucky that not lucky that I've made the mistakes, but I think lucky that I've been able to draw upon all my experiences and other people's to hopefully help other people navigate it. And, and I like being that person when things are happening in other people's lives that they can come to me and be like, what? How do I navigate this? That's a privilege as well, because you're helping people during really difficult times.
And I think everybody, we do have to remember that every single person in the whole world is going to go through grief at some point in their life, whether that's young because they've lost maybe a grandparent, maybe it's when they got older where they lose a spouse or, even a child. We're all going to go through grief. And so if we have that experience that we can help share with someone else, even though it's happened at a hugely young age and you shouldn't have had to have gone through that, losing a grandparent at your age is kind of normal, but losing your brother is not. And so it's not every day this happens. And so everyone, you can pass your knowledge on in so many ways. And when you are in the cancer community, there is an element of, we just need to find that community of support, the people that really understand, the people that you can talk to on a very different level to those that have never been through something like this before.
And it's so unifying. Like you said, we don't talk about it. Of all the things that are going to happen, we're born and we die.
Yep. Death is not necessarily the first topic everyone thinks about, but it's something we should be more open about talking about. There are cultures out there that do. They talk about death a lot, and we are just we just don't like to talk about anything bad.
No,
we're not very good at talking about bad.
Is so strange in this regard, and me and my wife talk about this quite often as well. And we have these important big conversations. Like you should be talking about wills. You should be talking about what you want to happen when you die. What songs do you want to play? I have a little note. That's the most depressing thing in the world. I've got a little note, Alex's death playlist. I've got like 3 or 4 songs that when she talks about them, I'm like...
So if you died, you've got them there.
I've got them, but I want to know that because I want to be able to honour that person afterwards.
And it makes it so much easier. I mean, I did it for my mum. Like she had a list, and it does make that so much easier when you are planning because you haven't got to have those arguments between family members.
Oh my God.
What's their favourite song? A parent might have a different one to her mum might say, oh, I want this one. And you might go, well, she wanted this one. And it's so difficult. So if you actually have it written down, and you don't have to be dying or have cancer or an illness to have a will and to have a living list and I don't know, all these other things that you kind of need. It just makes it
Can I just tell you about my dad? Because my dad is the most practical man that I know, and he's doing a lot of this work at the moment. My dad has a folder just called Postmark, which I think is the most my dad thing in the world.
That's brilliant.
It's just Postmark, and it's got everything we need to know in it for when he dies.
Okay.
So just Postmark. I don't know if he has a pre-mark or a during mark.
I'm doing that. I'm doing a post Laura. Just need that in my life.
He told me about it. I was like, yep, that makes sense, Dad. That's
and he can just add things to that list. Just keep adding.
It's but those sort of conversations are really important, and I think grief is one of these unifying. We talk about being around people who get it with cancer. The same for grief, and there should be nearly everyone is affected by it in some way. It should be okay to pick up on these themes, these topics, where we can have this sort of unified conversation around it. But there's just a lot of stigma, and I think there's a lot of stigma in how grief should affect people.
Yeah.
Like this, how you should react, or my grief's better than your grief. It's similar. I see these similarities.
Aren't they?
Yeah.
And there's no right or wrong way.
No.
And that's what we learn is this completely no right or wrong way for grief. And you just have to navigate it the best to your ability and just try to get through it in a safe way.
Yes.
That's in a safe way. I think we should do our quick fire questions.
Oh, sure.
So we've changed them up a little bit because obviously they have been about people with cancer, but we want to do it from your perspective. Perfect. So what advice would you give to someone who is worried that they might have cancer?
I'm going to go with the classic, which is go to your doctors straight away. Don't be embarrassed. Don't let that mental load of stressing about whether you might have cancer completely debilitate you. Just go and find out. More than likely, it's nothing. You're not wasting anyone's time. That's okay.
Yeah, definitely so important. What was the most impactful thing someone did for you after Rob passed away?
I was thinking about this, and I think the first one is just so generic. Just showing up.
Yeah.
There are a dozen people that in my mind are absolute heroes that I don't know if they know that because they just showed up. Yeah. They let me be me. They helped me as best as possible to navigate safely, like you said, even though I was in self-destruct mode. And
they're your cushions to something.
They just buffer you, right? You know, just sort of keep him like this. And I guess you do that with your close friendships. That's what makes loved ones. But I don't think people know how important it is just showing up. And that doesn't need to be major. That can be a text. That can be a voice note. That can be
hopping around and watching a film with you, just
absolutely.
That.
And that, I always say to people, the power of that is more important than grandiose gifts of trying to find the right words, but I couldn't find them, so I didn't send anything. Just show up. That's all it needs to be.
I remember one of my really close friends was holding my hair back while I was throwing up after my first chemo. And that will always stick in my memory as something that she did that. She didn't have to be there. And she did. And she didn't run away.
That's it.
And
they're on the pedestal then, once they've done that.
Oh gosh,
That's what being a good friend is. So.
Oh, totally. What is the worst thing someone has said to you regarding grief?
I think I try and be really. I go back to when Rob was early days. I probably had a lot more anger when Rob was ill and when he'd passed. But nowadays, looking back, it's difficult because they're all done with good intent, right? No one says stuff with malice. I've never experienced anyone saying anything with malice. Like, good, glad the fucker's gone or something like that would be tragically bad. But I think it's probably just the old cliches, things like he's in a better place. I'm like, I can tell you where he is. I watched his ashes get put in the bottom of a rose bush in the local creme. That's not a better place than hanging out with me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It sounded quite flippant, but that's the reality of the situation.
And people mean well, but it's difficult because,
and especially if you're not religious, a better place. You're like, well, Rob wasn't religious. He said, I've never believed in God, and I'm not going to start now. And we're not a religious family. So when you say stuff like that, but that feels a bit mean because I wouldn't blame someone being like talking about him in like an angel form or something. Do you know what I mean? Or being around, or his energy. So I try and be kind to people because they generally always mean well.
Yeah.
It can quite often just be generational rhetoric, can't it? Just repeating.
Oh, completely. Yeah. What advice would you give to someone who is supporting a loved one who has been recently diagnosed with cancer? Or going through the sort of terminal side of it as well?
I would say as much as you can do within the confines of what is happening, it's okay to be selfish. Because we often hear cancer patients saying, I was more worried about X, Y, and Z. The support network are fully focused on the person that is not themselves. And you are still going through all of that emotion, the roller coasters, the ups, the downs, but you're just buffering those so that you're not affecting anyone else. And it's easier said than done in a lot of circumstances, but finding the time for you, even if it's a coffee, a bit of mindfulness in the morning, going for a walk, asking someone to come over so you can get out of the house and just go to Aldi and do a shop. Whatever it is, and it can obviously be better self-care than that. That is very baseline.
But being selfish is being such a negative narrative.
Right.
Like we just think you can't be selfish. Yeah. Like being selfish is horrible. But actually, the only person you're being horrible to is you because you're not being selfish and you need to have that time. So yeah, I think we all need to
burnout, right?
Oh God,
you can't be your best self supporting someone else if you are tapped out. You can't drink from an empty glass, as they say.
And as much as they are important, the person who's the most important person in your life should be you.
Yeah.
Because if you are the one, having to go through all of these issues, emotions, everything, and actually if you're not, as you say, you've got to focus on you as number one.
Yeah.
And everything else is where you want to put your energy rather than where you have to put your energy. Because if you haven't got any energy, then we're all screwed.
Exactly. And I think along with that is the talking. I wish, although I had a great support network, I truly believe in the power of the third party with no emotional attachment to what's going on, that safe space. Because you talk to your friends, you talk to your loved ones, people that are near you. They've always got an emotional attachment to it. They're vested in one way or the other. If you go and sit in a room with a professional whose job it is there just to go, you're okay, say whatever. You can say whatever you want. You can sit there and cry.
Not going to be judged.
Judged. It's just, that was just such a powerful thing. I wish I'd done that during So I think I would have been a much.
Did you get that through hospice care? Or
Yes.
They're amazing at that, aren't they? So if ever you do have, if anyone listening here is suffering, please reach out to the hospice or your hospital, or even your GP, because they'll always be able to refer you on to somebody if you're struggling, especially if you've lost a loved one. Like, there is a lot of help out there. It's just finding it, isn't it?
You don't know what you don't know.
You know. And what's the biggest lesson that you've learned from cancer?
How friggin' lucky we are. It's gratitude. It's just gratitude. Like, everything we've been through as a family, everything I get to do in my job, I'm grateful for everything. I'm grateful for the highs. I'm grateful for the lows because I get to experience them. I'm grateful for the mistakes I make because I get to learn from them, the failures because I can do better. Everything. Like, I'm so aware of this just overwhelming purview of the world of, holy shit, I'm lucky to be here and experience this. Like, for me, the meaning of life is the fact that we know we're alive. Just consciousness, being here in this moment, sitting here talking to you. Like, I get to do this. And there are so many people that don't. And there's so many people who are out there that have this negative worldview of what's happening. And there is so much to focus on that if you allow yourself. But you can just go outside and look at nature and walk among the grass, or see a dog or a cat or a baby that makes you smile. And you're like, none of it fucking matters.
It's being present.
Yeah.
Being present. And also, it's given you that wake-up call. Actually, you don't have the illness of the cancer, but it's given almost you the same wake-up call as you would get if you had a cancer diagnosis. And it's going, I need to live my life. I just need to live and enjoy.
And with that, it's not like this drug-fueled, crazed, I need to be out doing things. It's like, I believe in contentness, not happiness. I love contentness. Like, I'm not looking for this. I'm looking for I love it.
It's easy.
Sorry, that doesn't translate to podcasting at all, does it?
No, he's waving his hand along a little.
Little waves. And this contentness, and I'm as content as can be on my sofa, as being in a podcast studio, delivering a talk, coming up with creative ideas. I'm lucky. I have found purpose through my brother's death. And that purpose is what drives me forward. And I think we're all striving for some sort of purpose. And in that, I get a lot of room to be creative. I get a lot of room to reflect on what we've achieved and who we've helped. Like, all of that is really, I'm in a privileged position. And
that's going to be impacting your kids' lives as well, because they're going to know that you're really present in their lives and you want the best for them. And I think, you can see it just happening the whole way.
Just all of it. They're having
treasuring.
They're having meltdowns because they're way too tired. And we're out for the Christmas lights last night, and I'm just like, it's
what it is.
It is. I feel like that.
They'll be happy again in half an hour. It's fine.
Exactly. And we talk about this as a family a lot. This, you have this purview of the world, and that is a privilege, because some people get that later in life. Some people never get that. We got hit very early with something very traumatic that was horrible, but it frames the rest of your life.
It really does. Well, before we wrap up, I just want you to do a little plug about your charity.
Can I plug some others as well?
Thank you. Definitely yours and a few others. Because you obviously run the Robin Cancer Trust. So just give us a quick, if anyone doesn't know about the charity, just give a quick little overview about what you do.
So we are the UK's germ cell cancer charity, and we do testicular, ovarian, germ cell cancer awareness, education and support. So we will go out to schools, colleges, universities, businesses all around the country, deliver virtual or in-person talks, usually wearing giant bollocks or angry ovaries. We've got loads of stickers, resources, digital resources that people can have. We've got a full schools program, which is really exciting. So people can come to us and we can either deliver workshops or, again, these assemblies and classroom-based activities. And then we do support through free cancer support packs for anyone diagnosed anywhere in the UK. Again, resources that we work with our partners to create. And we obviously do the Thrive Against Cancer podcast as well.
Amazing. And where can they find, what's all your addresses for that? It's just...
therobincancertrust.org or at RCT Charity on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook,
All the social media platforms,
basically. But yeah, if you see big bollocks, hashtag talking bollocks, hashtag not overreacting, that's us.
And the other charities that you want to just shout about?
Yeah, I think just going back to, people being affected by grief, you mentioned obviously the bereavement counselling at local hospices. Yeah. Absolutely brilliant. So just get in touch with your hospice. They will usually have a bereavement counselling service, a free counselling session. So they're absolutely amazing. I could literally talk about all the amazing charities, but if specifically grief, I think there's some amazing influencers online. So go on Instagram and go and find them, but also charities like Let's Talk About Loss, aimed mainly at like younger people, support peer-to-peer. They've again done loads of podcasts, loads of lives that I think there's some really amazing resources. I do believe social media can be a power for good. So just find an organisation, search for some hashtags, and you'll find a community who've been through something similar, I think.
Well, thank you. I hope it hasn't been too scary on the other side of the table. He'll be back in the hot seat again soon. But yeah, thank you so much for talking about your story. I think it's so important that we do touch on the relatives as well as the cancer patients themselves. So it's been massively insightful and helpful, I'm sure, to many. And thank you for being so open.
Thank you for listening, and thank you to our amazing supporters and funders who make this podcast happen. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a review and follow us on social media at Thrive Against Cancer. And be sure to check out our other episodes wherever you listen to your podcasts and on YouTube. If you want to help support our mission to give a voice to the cancer community, please contact us or visit our website to learn more at thriveagainstcancer.co.uk.